My cousin Sod is in the Coast Guard and has been for over 12 years. He's the kind of person who doesn't exaggerate, doesn't tell ghost stories, and definitely doesn't seek attention. Level-headed. This time, it was a different piece of cloth. Thinner, red, like an antique scarf, soaked and clinging with barnacles. On the 8th night, they both heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate ones, coming down the stairwell from the beacon room. Sod asked Mason if he'd gone up. Mason said no. Sod hadn't either. He just sat in the corner rocking slowly, muttering to someone only he could see. He told me, in the most serious voice I've ever heard him use, that some places don't like to be disturbed, that there are things older than reason living out there, waiting in the fog. The next morning, Sod called for emergency extraction on the sat phone, reporting a critical systems failure. The boat came that afternoon, but the crew asked them a strange question. What was with that distress call at 2:12 a.m.? Sod was confused. He hadn't touched the radio until after sunrise, but they swore someone had made a call, filled with static, saying only, "It's not just us here." They froze, waiting for whoever, or whatever, was coming down, but the footsteps simply stopped. The silence afterward was almost worse. That night, they shoved a cabinet in front of their room-s door and slept with knives under their pillows. The light had jammed in the exact same way. That's when they started to suspect this wasn't just a random mechanical issue. The bulb, a huge industrial one that required effort to remove, had been unscrewed and placed upright on the floor, as if displayed. Sod picked it up with shaking hands. Then something brushed his back. He spun around, but no one was there. Only Mason, pale as bone, pointing at the wall and whispering. It came out of the stone. They checked the entire tower. Doors secured, windows latched. They even started locking the upper chamber and blocking the stairwell with crates at night. But the feeling of being watched never really left. Sod said by the 6th night, Mason began acting strange, talking to himself in short, hushed sentences, staring into corners. One night, Sod asked who he was speaking to. Mason looked confused, said he hadn't said a word. Later that same night, Sod found him standing by the window, whispering that he saw a figure standing on the rocks, just out of reach of the light. Practical and always calm. The kind of guy who prefers tools over That's why, when he told me what happened during his assignment in 2018, I believed every word. I made him repeat it 3 times over the summer of 2022, and every time, the details stayed exactly the same. It happened at a place called Warden's Rock, a tiny, isolated crag of stone off the coast of northern Maine. No dock, no bridge, no power grid, just a rust-covered lighthouse and a maintenance shed on a piece of land barely large enough to stand on. The lighthouse was automated, but the system had been failing unpredictably, so the Coast Guard sent a 2-man crew for diagnostics. Usually it was a solo job, but this time, Sod was sent with another officer, Mason. The first few nights were what you'd expect. Wind, cold, boredom. They spent their days inspecting the beacon's gears, topping off fuel, and cleaning away layers of salt and rust. At night, they'd sit inside the stone base of the tower, playing cards and eating whatever rations they brought. There were no signs of anything odd, until the 4th night. Sod said he woke up at 2:12 a.m. with a strange pressure in the air, like the kind that builds before lightning. Though the sky outside was crystal clear, something felt off. He got up to check the lighthouse window and noticed the beacon wasn't rotating. The light, which should have been sweeping every 10 seconds, was dead still. He roused Mason, and the two climbed the winding iron stairs to the beacon chamber. The gears were humming, trying to move the mechanism, but something was lodged in the assembly. They pulled it free. It was a damp, tangled cloak or shawl, heavy with brine and sea moss, smelling like old kelp. No clue how it got there. The door was locked from the inside, and there were no open windows. Thinking it was some weird fluke, they tossed the cloth into the ocean and went back to bed. The next night, again around 2 a.m., the beacon stopped. Things escalated quickly. Mason stopped eating, stopped sleeping. He'd just sit there in the main room, eyes fixed on the staircase. By the 10th night, the beacon had failed again, but this time the door to the beacon room was wide open, wind shrieking through the tower. They ran, locked themselves in the supply room downstairs. Mason didn't speak again that night. Mason left the Coast Guard shortly after. Sad still does his tours, but he refuses to go anywhere near Warden's Rock again.